son had always lived in a world of darkness until a humble, unassuming janitor did the impossible. One quiet afternoon, young Nathaniel Blackwood's innocent voice broke through the hushed atmosphere of his father's sprawling office. "Dad, what color is the sky?" The question struck Samuel Blackwood, the CEO of the illustrious Blackwood Enterprises, like an unexpected blow. How could he possibly explain something so complex, something so foreign to his son, who had never seen the sun, the moon, or the sky itself? Nathaniel was only 9, yet his world was perpetually dark, despite the luxuries that surrounded him in the family's opulent mansion worth over $20 million. Nathaniel was born blind, a condition doctors had long ago declared beyond repair. His optic nerves were irrevocably damaged, and no amount of money could change that. Samuel had spent years searching for a cure, leading his son to renowned specialists in Europe, investing heavily in experimental treatments, and even exploring futuristic technologies. But nothing worked. Nathaniel's life was one of constant dependence. He couldn't even walk through the mansion without a guide, his hands stretched out to avoid obstacles, his steps uncertain. It was then that Maria Johnson, a new addition to their staff, interrupted him. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Blackwood, but I'm Maria, the new cleaning lady." Her voice was soft, almost tentative, but Samuel barely looked up from his computer screen. A woman in her late 50s, with graying hair tied in a neat bun, Maria wore a faded blue uniform and held a mop in her hands. To Samuel, she was just another temporary worker. His mind remained on his business deals. "The butler will brief you on your duties," Samuel said curtly, returning to his laptop. "Please stay away from my son." Maria nodded respectfully, though her eyes lingered for a moment on the boy sitting quietly in the corner, clutching his stuffed bear. Nathaniel had a look of loneliness that no one had seemed to notice before. When Maria noticed, something in her stirred, a compassion that none of the highly paid doctors had ever displayed. She knelt down to Nathaniel's level, her voice warm and gentle. "Hey there, sweetie. What's your name?" Nathaniel turned his face toward her, intrigued by her calmness. "Nathaniel," he replied, his words soft, his head tilting slightly, as if to take in her energy. "You feel different from the others," he said, a mix of curiosity and innocence in his voice. Samuel, irritated by the interaction, quickly stood up and called out, "Maria, I said stay away from my son. Nathaniel, go to your room." But there was something in Maria's eyes, a peaceful depth, as if she held knowledge far beyond the reach of anyone in this house. It was a calmness that didn't come from books or degrees, but from a place of experience and inner wisdom. As Nathaniel stood up to obey his father, Maria murmured softly, "Darling, sometimes the darkest moments are just the beginning of the brightest light." Nathaniel paused, his small hand on the doorframe, his face lighting up for the first time in weeks. He smiled. That evening, as Nathaniel lay sleeping, Maria retreated to the small room at the back of the house where she lived. In a worn cloth bag, she carried a small glass jar filled with a homemade ointment, an ancient remedy passed down from her grandmother, an herbal healer in rural Louisiana. Maria had always believed that true healing didn't come from fancy clinics or expensive treatments. Healing came from love, from nature, and from belief, things that money couldn't buy. And so, quietly, Maria prayed for the boy, knowing deep in her heart that a change was on the horizon. Over the following days, the routine in the Blackwood mansion remained as precise and rigid as ever under Samuel's watchful eye. Maria arrived every morning at 6 a.m. to clean the upper floors, always moving quietly, trying to remain as invisible as possible to the powerful family she worked for. But Nathaniel had started to wait for her by the staircase each morning. "Maria, you're back," the boy would whisper, as if to confirm the arrival of his familiar companion, his voice filled with a softness that Samuel had never heard before. Maria would smile gently. "I always come back, dear. People like me always keep their promises." These brief interactions were a subtle source of warmth and connection for Nathaniel, something his father never gave him. Samuel, however, was noticing. As a high-stakes business call with foreign investors echoed through his office one afternoon, he paused when he heard Nathaniel laughing in the garden, a sound so rare it made his stomach tighten. Excusing himself from the meeting, Samuel stormed downstairs, finding Maria sitting on a garden bench beside his son. Nathaniel was feeling various leaves with his hands, his face lit up in wonder as he touched their different textures. He was laughing, a sound Samuel hadn't heard from him in months. "Maria," Samuel growled as he approached, his tone harsh, "I told you to stay away from my son. Nathaniel needs professional therapy, not this nonsense from a cleaning lady." Maria remained unflinching, her hands clasped together, her voice steady as she met Samuel's glare. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't do anything but talk to him while I work. Your son is lonely. There's nothing wrong with kindness." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Nathaniel has the best specialist in the country, Maria. He doesn't need someone like you. You're unqualified." But Maria wasn't deterred. She had lived a life full of trials, surviving times when no one but her own people had been there for her. She grew up with her grandmother, Mama Celia, in Louisiana, where they had learned to use herbs and natural remedies when doctors refused to care for the underserved community they lived in. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her tone almost whispering, "your son is sad. Money can't fix sadness." The word struck Samuel deeply, though he refused to admit it. His fists clenched at his sides. Who did she think she was, giving him advice about his son? He'd spent millions, and now this woman had the gall to tell him that his wealth meant nothing? "I told you to keep away from Nathaniel. If I catch you talking to him again, you're fired." Maria, unfazed, nodded, and quietly left the room. She had faced men like Samuel before, arrogant, proud, and blind to the real value of life. She had seen more cruelty in the world than most could imagine, and had always fought for what was right, no matter the cost. Later that evening, after Samuel left for a dinner meeting with clients, Maria made her way up to Nathaniel's room. She found him sitting alone on his bed, his teddy bear clutched tightly in his arms. He looked so small in the vastness of the room, the weight of his isolation heavy in the air. "Can I come in, darling?" Maria asked, her voice soft. "I thought Dad fired you." "Your father doesn't scare me, Nathaniel. I've seen men like him all my life." Maria sat down beside him, reaching into her apron pocket to pull out a small cloth sachet. Opening the sachet, she held it up for him to smell. "My grandmother always said some plants carry sunlight inside them. Smell this." Nathaniel inhaled the calming scent of lavender mixed with herbs Maria had gathered from the backyard. "It smells like peace," he murmured, closing his eyes. "That's right, darling. Now close your eyes again, not just to the light, but to everything else. Take a deep breath and tell me what you feel." Nathaniel obeyed, and for a few seconds there was silence. Then his face brightened. "There's light, Maria. It's tiny, but it's there. A golden star. It feels real." Maria's heart raced, but she kept her voice calm. "That light will grow, Nathaniel.
But remember, it's our secret for now." What Maria didn't say was that she knew this was only the beginning. The boy was healing, and his journey was just starting.
The days following Maria's quiet promise were filled with subtle yet undeniable changes. Nathaniel began to walk with more confidence, his steps surer, less hesitant. The days when he would stumble around the house, unable to navigate without someone guiding him, were slowly becoming fewer. Samuel noticed the shift, but he attributed it to the $50,000 worth of medical treatments Nathaniel was receiving at the clinic. After all, how can anyone believe that the progress came from something as simple as a few whispered words from a cleaning lady? Surely it had to be the expensive experimental therapies, the world-class specialists who were pushing the boundaries of medical science. He paid no attention to the quiet changes happening every day under his roof. In the weeks that followed, Samuel kept up with his rigorous schedule, attending board meetings and hosting high-profile conferences to maintain his business empire. Meanwhile, Maria continued her work, quietly guiding Nathaniel with soft words and gentle care. But what Samuel didn't realize was that Maria's efforts were far from ordinary. Every evening, after the household was settled and Samuel left for business dinners, Maria would slip into Nathaniel's room, applying drops of the homemade ointment that had been passed down from her grandmother. Each night, the boy's vision improved a little more. Maria's faith and patience were beginning to yield results, but she never spoke of it openly. She knew that Samuel wouldn't understand, and she preferred to let the healing speak for itself. Each night, she would whisper the same words to Nathaniel. "You are more than what they see, more than what they tell you. You're capable of more than they think." One afternoon, as Maria cleaned the kitchen, she overheard Samuel bragging to a group of executives. The conversation made her stomach churn. "My son's recovery has been remarkable," Samuel was saying, his voice proud. "The best specialists in the world are working on him. We've spent millions, but it's all worth it to see him making progress." One of the executives, impressed, asked, "How's the daily care routine? That must be intense." Samuel, puffing out his chest, replied, "We've got the best. Our team includes physical therapists from Harvard, behavioral psychologists, the finest experts. It's all about cutting-edge science." Maria clenched her fists as she continued her work, silently wiping down counters. Samuel was taking all the credit for Nathaniel's progress, failing to acknowledge the real force behind the boy's recovery. She knew the truth, though. She knew it was love and patience, not machines or money, that had brought Nathaniel to this point. But she kept her peace, knowing that her time would come. One evening, something unexpected happened. Nathaniel, eager to show his newfound independence, decided to venture downstairs alone for a glass of water. His movements were no longer tentative or uncertain. As he stepped confidently down the stairs, Samuel, who had been working in his office, heard the sound of Nathaniel's footsteps and rushed to investigate. When he found his son in the kitchen, pouring water with smooth, deliberate movements, he froze. "Nathaniel," Samuel said, his voice both proud and startled, "how did you manage to come downstairs by yourself?" Nathaniel looked up, his face glowing with joy. "I can do it, Dad. Everything feels clearer now. I knew exactly where to go." Just as Samuel was about to speak, Maria entered the room, appearing from the back of the house. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood," she greeted, her voice neutral, though Samuel could detect an underlying confidence in it. For a moment, Nathaniel's gaze shifted toward her. He called her Rose, the name she had told him to call her. "I did it. I came downstairs all by myself." Samuel's eyes narrowed as he watched the interaction. For the first time, he was noticing something strange, how Nathaniel's movements seemed so natural, how he gravitated toward Maria with such ease. There was a bond between them that he couldn't explain. The closeness between the two was palpable, and it left Samuel feeling uneasy. He could see it in the way Nathaniel's face lit up when Maria was near, as if she were the only one who truly saw him. "Go back to your room, Nathaniel. It's late," Samuel ordered, trying to suppress the growing discomfort he felt. As Nathaniel obeyed, his gaze remained fixed on Maria, suspicion flickering in his eyes for the first time. "How long have you been working here? And why has my son been so attached to you?" Maria met his gaze without flinching. "I've been here 3 months, Mr. Blackwood. As for your son, children know who cares for them. It's something they can sense, even when adults forget." Samuel's jaw clenched at the audacity of her words. It was as though she were challenging him, questioning his authority. But he didn't respond. Instead, he left the room, his mind racing with uncertainty. Could it be that he had underestimated this woman? Could she be more involved in Nathaniel's recovery than he had realized? As Maria continued her work, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The idea that a cleaning lady, a woman he had seen as little more than a temporary worker, could have such an impact on his son was a thought he wasn't ready to entertain. But the changes in Nathaniel were undeniable. Every day his son seemed a little more present, a little more aware. And slowly, Samuel began to suspect that the healing process wasn't just coming from the doctors, the therapists, or the high-tech treatments. One evening, after another tense dinner, Maria slipped into Nathaniel's room, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her secret would soon be uncovered. As she sat beside him, she applied another drop of the ointment, just as she had done every night. Nathaniel looked up at her with bright eyes, his expression full of trust and gratitude. "Rose, thank you for showing me the light." Maria smiled softly, her heart swelling with affection. "It's my pleasure, dear. You're the one who found it within yourself." As Nathaniel drifted off to sleep, Maria knew that the time had come. She had been holding on to this secret for months, watching as her healing hands worked their magic, but she couldn't keep quiet forever. It was time to face Samuel and the truth he wasn't ready to hear. The following morning, the Blackwood mansion was filled with a tense atmosphere. The sun had barely risen when Samuel received a call from his press secretary. He answered quickly, his voice tight with impatience. "Yes, what is it?" "Mr. Blackwood, we've got a situation. Someone's leaked information to the Tribune. It's about your son's recovery," the press secretary said, his voice fraught with urgency. "They've got photos, documents. It looks like someone's trying to discredit the treatments you've been funding." Samuel's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced. "What are you talking about? How could this happen?" "I don't know, but it's going to break tomorrow," the press secretary replied. "We need to prepare for the fallout. The story is about your son's so-called miracle cure, and it's going to make a big splash." The line went dead, and Samuel sat in stunned silence. His thoughts raced. Who would want to ruin everything he had worked so hard to achieve? Who could possibly undermine the carefully constructed image of a father's devotion and wealth? But the answer soon became clear. Maria. The thought was like a punch to the gut. Could she have been the one behind it all? Could she have been the one to reveal the truth? It didn't make sense. After all, she was just a cleaning lady. What power did she have? Samuel clenched his fists. He couldn't let his empire crumble over this. His reputation, his wealth, everything depended on this. He had to act quickly, and that meant confronting Maria. Later that day, as the house buzzed with the usual activity, Samuel found himself waiting at the kitchen door. His mind was a whirlwind of questions, suspicions, and accusations. He had to get to the bottom of it. When Maria appeared in the doorway, he didn't even wait for her to speak. "Maria," he began, his voice cold and sharp, "I know what you've done. I know you've been feeding information to the Tribune. It's about your son's recovery." Maria's eyes flickered with a brief moment of surprise, but she remained calm. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Samuel hissed, his voice rising. "You've been undermining everything I've worked for. You've been telling the media about your so-called healing." Maria stood her ground, her voice steady. "I haven't done anything to harm you, Mr. Blackwood. I've been helping Nathaniel because he needed it. Not for fame, not for money, just because he deserves to be seen and loved." Samuel's face reddened with anger. "You think you're some kind of miracle worker? Do you have any idea what you've done? I spent millions on his care, and you're going to sit there and claim credit for it?" Maria didn't flinch. "You may have spent millions, Mr. Blackwood, but money doesn't heal the soul. You've been so focused on what money can buy that you never saw what Nathaniel really needed." The words hit Samuel harder than he expected. For a brief moment, the world around him seemed to tilt. He wanted to argue, to lash out, but instead he found himself momentarily speechless. Maria continued, her voice softening. "I've been doing what I know best. My grandmother taught me that healing comes from love, not just from pills and machines. And Nathaniel needed that. You weren't there for him in the way that mattered." "Enough," Samuel spat. "You've taken it too far. I want you gone, now." Maria didn't flinch. She nodded respectfully, but her eyes shone with a quiet strength. "I'm not going anywhere, Mr. Blackwood. I'm here for Nathaniel. I promised I'd be here, and I keep my promises." As she turned to leave, Samuel's thoughts swirled. He couldn't understand it. How had this woman, this lowly cleaning lady, managed to change everything? How had she reached his son in ways he never could? Later that day, the truth was exposed to the world. The Chicago Tribune article, complete with photographs and detailed accounts, hit the newsstands. The headline read, "Millionaire father falsely claims credit for his son's miracle cure. The true healer is his cleaning lady." The story spread like wildfire. Samuel's carefully constructed image shattered. Investors, business partners, and the public all began to question his integrity. The claims of his son's recovery now seemed hollow, built on lies and half-truths. As the article detailed, it wasn't the millions Samuel had spent that had healed Nathaniel. It was the love, patience, and care provided by Maria, the same woman he had tried to dismiss and belittle. The fallout was swift. Media outlets lined up outside the Blackwood mansion, desperate for a statement. Samuel's company was inundated with angry clients, and the board members demanded an explanation. His wealth, which he had so proudly flaunted, now seemed irrelevant in the face of the truth. Meanwhile, Maria continued her quiet work in the background, helping Nathaniel with the small yet profound steps of his recovery. She remained out of the spotlight, refusing to take credit for the miracle that had taken place under Samuel's nose. As the days passed, Nathaniel's improvements were undeniable. He walked with confidence. His smile grew brighter each day. He could now identify objects, distinguish light from shadow, and even identify colors, a feat that had been deemed impossible. And it wasn't the doctors or the million-dollar treatments that had made it happen. It was Maria's steady presence, her belief in him, and her commitment to his healing. One day, Samuel found himself alone in his office with a stack of papers in front of him. His mind wandered to the events of the past few weeks, the media chaos, the public humiliation, and the loss of everything he had worked for. He was a man on the brink of losing everything, but more importantly, he had lost something much more valuable than money or reputation: his son's trust.
The days following the scandal were a blur of confusion and humiliation for Samuel Blackwood. His once coveted reputation, built on years of ambition, had crumbled overnight. His wealth, which had always been his security, now seemed like a hollow reflection of what truly mattered. He spent his days locked away in his office, ignoring the constant flow of calls and messages as the reality of his situation set in. Maria, on the other hand, remained steadfast. She continued her quiet work in the background, never seeking the spotlight, never claiming credit for what had happened. She had always known that healing was about more than just physical recovery.
It was about restoring a person's spirit, giving them hope where there had been none, and that was exactly what Nathaniel needed. Despite the uproar outside the Blackwood mansion, Maria's presence in Nathaniel's life became more crucial than ever. The boy was changing. His world was growing, bit by bit. He no longer needed to rely on others to guide him through the house. He could walk with confidence, his steps steady, his senses awakening to the world around him. His smile was brighter than ever, and his laughter, once a rare sound, had become a common melody in the mansion. One afternoon, as Samuel sat in his office, grappling with the reality of his situation, he heard the faint sound of Nathaniel laughing. It was coming from the garden. His curiosity piqued. Samuel rose from his desk and walked to the window, watching his son from afar. Nathaniel was sitting on the grass, his hands tracing the shapes of flowers Maria had planted for him. Samuel's heart ached as he watched Nathaniel smile at the plants, feeling their textures and colors. The boy was so full of life, so full of wonder. For the first time, Samuel saw the depth of what had been missing from his life. He had spent so many years chasing success, amassing wealth, believing that it would fill the emptiness, but it hadn't. Nathaniel had filled that emptiness with love, care, and the simple things that Samuel had overlooked. It was then that Samuel made a decision. He knew that his actions over the past few months had hurt his son, and he knew that he needed to make things right. He couldn't undo the past, but he could start by acknowledging the truth. The following evening, after dinner, Samuel found himself standing in Nathaniel's room. The boy was sitting on his bed, a notebook open in front of him as he scribbled down colorful drawings. His eyes were bright, his face glowing with a happiness that had been absent for so long. Samuel stood in the doorway, watching him for a moment before speaking. "Nathaniel," Samuel said softly, his voice carrying the weight of regret, "I want to apologize. I've been blind. I didn't see what really mattered. I thought I could buy you everything you needed, but I was wrong. I see that now." Nathaniel looked up, his face lighting up with a mixture of surprise and confusion. "What do you mean, Dad?" Samuel took a deep breath, stepping into the room. "I've spent my whole life chasing after success, after wealth. I thought those things would make you happy, that they would heal you, but I see now that I've been wrong. What really matters is love, patience, and the belief that you're capable of anything. I should have seen that before. I should have been there for you the way Maria has been." Nathaniel sat in silence for a moment, his eyes searching his father's face. Then slowly he smiled. "I know, Dad. I know you love me. But Maria helped me see the world in a way you couldn't. She taught me to believe in myself. She's been there for me when no one else was." "I know, son. I know, and I'm sorry. I've let my pride get in the way, but I want to make things right. I want to start over." Nathaniel nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "It's okay, Dad. I can see now, and that's all that matters." In that moment, Samuel realized that the healing his son had undergone was not just physical. It was emotional, spiritual. Nathaniel had learned to trust again, to believe in himself and in the people around him. He had been given a second chance at life, and that was something Samuel couldn't put a price on. The next day, Samuel took a step that would change everything. He called Maria into his office, his tone respectful and measured. "Maria," he began, his voice filled with sincerity, "I owe you an apology for everything. You've done more for Nathaniel than I ever could, and I failed to see that. You've given him something money can't buy, love. I've been blind to that, but I see it now. I want to thank you." Maria stood in the doorway, her eyes steady. She didn't respond immediately, but after a long pause, She said, "You don't need to thank me, Mr. Blackwood. I did what needed to be done for Nathaniel. That's all." Samuel nodded, his heart heavy with gratitude. "I understand. I also want to make it right. I want to give Nathaniel a chance to grow up in a way I never allowed before. I'll stop pretending that money is the answer to everything." Maria's eyes softened. "It's never too late to learn, Mr. Blackwood, but you have to believe that." Samuel nodded again, his mind clearer than it had been in months. He had been given a rare opportunity to mend the broken relationship with his son and to finally understand what really mattered. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Samuel was willing to walk it.
The days following Samuel's heartfelt apology marked the beginning of a slow but steady transformation in the Blackwood mansion. For the first time in years, there was a sense of peace in the house, something that had been absent since Nathaniel was born. Samuel's mindset had shifted, and with it, so had his approach to fatherhood. He began spending more time with Nathaniel, not as a businessman trying to fix problems with money, but as a father who wanted to truly connect with his son. Their days together, once filled with silence and distance, were now filled with laughter, shared moments, and real conversations. Samuel learned to appreciate the small things, the way Nathaniel's face lit up when he saw a bird in the garden, the way his son would eagerly describe the feel of a rose petal or the shape of a tree branch. Samuel found himself listening more than he had ever done before, and, surprisingly, it was the simplest things that gave him the greatest joy. Maria, though still humble and quiet, began to notice the change. It wasn't just in Samuel's behavior, it was in Nathaniel too. The boy was no longer the withdrawn, lonely child he had been. He was now the center of the house, his voice a constant hum of excitement and curiosity. Samuel had begun taking an active role in Nathaniel's development, no longer relying solely on the doctors and therapists, but also listening to his son's needs and desires. Maria continued to apply the ointment each night, as she had done since the beginning. But now she could see the difference in Nathaniel's eyes. There was light in them, a light that once had been absent. The boy was no longer just surviving, he was thriving. One evening, as Samuel sat in his office contemplating the future, there was a knock on the door. He looked up to see Nathaniel standing in the doorway, his face flushed with excitement. "Dad, come outside! You've got to see this!" Nathaniel said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Samuel set his papers aside and followed his son to the garden. As they walked, Nathaniel eagerly pointed toward the sky. "I can see it now, Dad! The sunset! The colors are so beautiful! The orange, the pinks, the blues, it's amazing!" For a moment, Samuel stood in awe. His son, the boy who had once been blind, was now standing before him, marveling at something as simple as the beauty of the setting sun. And for the first time, Samuel realized the true meaning of what had happened in their lives. This was more than a miracle. It was a rebirth. Maria, who had been in the garden tending to the plants, smiled as she watched them. She had known all along that Nathaniel's recovery wasn't just about the restoration of his sight, it was about the restoration of his spirit. And in that moment, as she watched father and son share this quiet, beautiful experience together, she felt the weight of her work fulfilled. Samuel turned to her, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Maria, for everything. You've given us more than I could ever repay." Maria nodded, her eyes filled with quiet wisdom. "No need to thank me, Mr. Blackwood. I did what anyone would do if they truly cared." But Samuel wasn't so sure. He had learned the hard way that sometimes the people who care the most are the ones who go unnoticed, the ones who aren't recognized or valued. Maria had always been there, with no expectation of reward or recognition, simply doing what she felt was right. In many ways, she had shown him the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't in the billions he had accumulated over the years, but in the small, quiet acts of kindness and care that often went unnoticed. The media frenzy surrounding Nathaniel's recovery had died down, but the story had left its mark. People across the country had been inspired by the miracle that had occurred within the walls of the Blackwood mansion. The world had seen the truth, that real healing comes not from money or technology, but from love, patience, and belief. And Maria had embodied all of those qualities in abundance. As time passed, the Blackwood family slowly rebuilt itself, not in the way Samuel had once imagined, with corporate deals and luxury, but in a more meaningful way. Samuel's relationship with Nathaniel grew stronger every day, and he learned that true happiness didn't come from wealth. It came from the connections between people, from giving and receiving love, from learning to be present. Nathaniel, now fully recovered, attended school regularly, made friends, and participated in activities that once seemed impossible. He played soccer, learned to paint, and often filled the house with his laughter and excitement. He would show Samuel his latest painting, a swirl of vibrant colors, or proudly announce that he had scored a goal at practice. One day, while the two were walking through the garden together, Nathaniel stopped and turned to his father. "You know, Dad, I think I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. I want to paint things that make people feel happy, like how I feel now." Samuel smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "I think you'll make a wonderful artist, son. The world needs more people who can see beauty, even in the darkest places." Nathaniel beamed, his face full of excitement. "I think I can do it. You've helped me see, Dad. You and Maria. You both showed me that there's more to life than what we can see with our eyes. There's so much more." Samuel didn't say anything at first, but his heart was full. He had always thought that being a father meant providing for his child, securing their future with wealth and success. But now he understood. Being a father meant showing up, being there, and teaching his son to believe in himself. Maria, standing quietly nearby, watched father and son. She had witnessed so many things in her life, so much pain, so much loss. But this was the greatest miracle of all, the healing of a family, the healing of a heart. As the sun set over the garden, casting a golden light over everything, Maria knew it was time for her to leave. Her work here was done. The boy she had helped had found his way, and his father had finally understood the true value of what really mattered. As she gathered her few belongings, Samuel came to her, his voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you, Maria. You've given us a second chance at life." Maria smiled softly, her eyes glistening with quiet pride. "You don't need to thank me, Mr. Blackwood. You've done what matters most. You've learned. That's all that matters." With that, Maria walked out of the mansion, head held high. The world might never fully understand the depths of her work, but she knew that she had made a difference in Nathaniel's life, and that, in the end, was all that mattered. As she stepped into the world beyond the mansion gates, a new chapter began for both Maria and the Blackwood family, one where healing, love, and understanding would always be at the heart of it. Months passed, and life in the Blackwood mansion continued to evolve.
Samuel, now a different man, embraced the quieter, simpler moments he had once overlooked. His company, though still thriving, was no longer his singular focus. His priority had shifted. It was now Nathaniel. Samuel spent afternoons with his son in the garden, helping him identify flowers by touch, marveling at the colors Nathaniel could now see with such clarity. Their bond, once strained and distant, was now full of warmth and connection. As for Nathaniel, he flourished. His recovery went far beyond his physical sight. His spirit had been reborn. He excelled in school, where his teachers marveled at his creativity and his ability to think beyond the ordinary. He'd taken to painting in his spare time, filling pages with colorful depictions of the world around him, each stroke infused with the joy of having rediscovered life in all its vibrancy. Yet, despite the family's newfound peace, a part of Samuel still felt unsettled. He couldn't help but wonder if he could ever fully repay the debt he owed to Maria. After all, she had not only healed his son physically, but had restored his own understanding of the world. She had shown him that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought. They were earned through compassion, understanding, and love. One crisp autumn day, as the orange leaves drifted lazily from the trees outside, Samuel made a decision. He needed to find Maria, to express his gratitude in a way that words couldn't capture. She had disappeared from their lives just as quietly as she had entered, and though Samuel had tried to find her, she seemed to have vanished into thin air. He asked around, inquiring through his contacts, but Maria had left no trace. It was as if she had been a quiet force sent to heal, and once her work was done, she had simply slipped away. This thought nagged at Samuel. How could he possibly thank someone who had given him everything and asked for nothing in return? One afternoon, as he and Nathaniel took a walk in the nearby park, something unusual happened. They were strolling by a small local community center when Nathaniel stopped, his face lighting up in excitement. "Dad, I remember this place!" Nathaniel exclaimed. He looked at Samuel with wide eyes. "This is where I went to my first art class. The teacher was so nice, and she said I had talent. I never told you about it because I guess I didn't want to make you sad." Samuel's heart tightened. He had never known Nathaniel attended an art class. He had been so focused on medical treatments, on what doctors could offer, that he hadn't paid attention to what Nathaniel truly loved. "Why didn't you tell me?" Samuel asked gently. "I didn't think you'd understand," Nathaniel said, his eyes downcast. "You were always so busy with work, but I guess I just wanted you to see me for who I am, not just your son, but someone with dreams." Samuel swallowed hard. He had missed so much. But here, in this moment, he was trying to make up for the lost time. He took Nathaniel's hand and walked into the center with him. Inside, they found a small gallery where the art from the students was displayed. Nathaniel's work was there, vibrant landscapes, abstract shapes, and images that captured the light he had only recently learned to see. Samuel stood silently before the paintings, his heart swelling with pride. His son, who had once been a prisoner to darkness, had transformed into a young artist, pouring his soul onto the canvas. As they walked further inside, Samuel's eyes landed on a familiar figure, Maria. She was sitting in a corner of the gallery, surrounded by students, teaching a small group of children. It was a stark contrast to the quiet woman who had once worked in his mansion, but the love she poured into her work was just as evident. Maria looked up as they approached. Her eyes softened when she saw Nathaniel standing beside Samuel. She stood up slowly, as if hesitant to disturb the fragile balance they had all found. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice warm and kind, "it's so good to see you thriving." Nathaniel grinned, his face full of joy. "I'm painting now, Maria, just like you taught me to." Maria smiled, her heart full of quiet pride. "I'm so glad to hear that. You've always had the gift, Nathaniel. It was just waiting for you to see it." Samuel cleared his throat, his voice thick with emotion. "Maria, I don't know how to thank you for everything, for helping Nathaniel, for helping me see what really matters." His words came out in a rush, as if the weight of all his guilt and gratitude had finally caught up with him. Maria held up a hand to stop him, her face serene. "You don't have to thank me, Samuel. What matters is that you're here. You're present with your son now. That's all that matters. You've learned to see with your heart, and that's the greatest gift of all." Samuel was silent for a long moment, taking in her words. In the time that he had known Maria, he had come to understand that healing came from a deeper place than anything money could buy. His own journey had been one of awakening, and though he could never repay her for the gift she had given him, he knew he had to try. "Would you ever consider coming back?" Samuel asked quietly. "You've given us so much already, but we still need you. Nathaniel still needs you." Maria smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I've done what I came here to do, Samuel. I can't stay. It's time for you to walk the rest of the journal on your own. You're ready." "But," Samuel began, his words faltering. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "The most important thing I can teach you is this. You don't need me to fix things. You have everything you need already. You just have to keep believing in it." Nathaniel looked up at Maria with an innocent but knowing smile. "I'm going to keep painting, I promise." Maria's heart swelled with warmth. "I know you will. And when you do, remember that you're painting from the light inside you. You're painting from your heart." With that, she turned and began to walk toward the door, leaving behind a legacy of healing, love, and quiet wisdom. As she left the gallery, she knew that her work was done, not because the world had fully understood her, but because she had helped one soul see the world in a way they never had before. Samuel watched her go, and for the first time he felt no regret. He had learned what mattered most: the love of a son, the power of forgiveness, and the realization that the greatest wealth a person could have was the capacity to give and receive love. As he turned back to Nathaniel, who was already sketching a new image in his notebook, Samuel knew that the road ahead would be full of new challenges. But with his son by his side and the lessons Maria had imparted to them, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would continue to heal, to grow, and to see the world in ways they never had imagined. And so, the Blackwood family, father and son, began their journey into a new chapter, one where the true light of love and understanding would always guide them.
As the weeks turned into months, life for the Blackwood family continued to evolve in ways Samuel could never have imagined. His relationship with Nathaniel grew deeper, more meaningful. The boy was thriving in ways Samuel had once thought impossible. His passion for art blossomed, his schoolwork excelled, and his joyful laughter filled every corner of the house. Samuel had learned that true success didn't come from business deals, multi-million-dollar contracts, or power. It came from being present, from truly understanding what was important. Maria's absence left a quiet space in their lives, but her lessons lingered. Every day, Samuel made an effort to listen, to truly listen to Nathaniel. They spent afternoons together, painting, exploring the garden, and even discussing Nathaniel's growing dreams of becoming an artist. Samuel had become a student of his son's world, and Nathaniel, with his bright eyes and unwavering optimism, had become his greatest teacher. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson, Samuel sat with Nathaniel in the garden. The boy was drawing, his sketchbook open, the world around him a canvas of color and light. Samuel watched him, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. "Dad," Nathaniel said softly, not looking up from his drawing, "do you remember when I couldn't see anything?" Samuel's heart tightened, the memory of those dark days still fresh. "I do," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But you can see now, Nathaniel, and you're doing amazing things." Nathaniel smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I know, Dad, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Maria hadn't come to help us. She taught me how to see, not just with my eyes, but with my heart. I still miss her." Samuel placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his voice gentle. "I miss her too, son. But I think Maria gave us something more important than just sight. She taught us how to see the world the right way, and she's always with us in everything you do." Nathaniel looked up at his father, his eyes shining with understanding. "I think you're right. I'll keep painting for her, Dad, for both of you." Samuel smiled, his heart full of gratitude and love for the son who had taught him so much. "I'm proud of you, Nathaniel. You've come so far, and I know you'll keep going. Whatever you decide to do, I'll always be here, supporting you." In that moment, Samuel realized that the most precious gift he had ever received was not the wealth he had spent years amassing. It wasn't the business success, the luxury, or the fame. It was the connection he now shared with Nathaniel, a bond built on trust, love, and the understanding that sometimes the most important things in life couldn't be seen at all.
One day, Nathaniel was invited to showcase his work at a prestigious gallery in Chicago. It was a moment that marked a turning point in his life. Samuel, standing beside him in front of a large canvas depicting a landscape of swirling clouds and bright, vibrant colors, couldn't hold back his pride. The boy who had once stumbled in the darkness was now a young man whose vision reached far beyond what Samuel had ever imagined. "Dad, look," Nathaniel said, pointing to one of his paintings. "I painted this for Maria. I remember her telling me to always paint from my heart, no matter what. This is my thank you to her." Samuel's throat tightened as he looked at the painting. It was a beautiful depiction of a field of flowers bathed in sunlight, a reminder of the hope that had blossomed in Nathaniel's life. "It's beautiful, son. Maria would be so proud of you." As they stood there together, admiring the painting, a feeling of peace washed over Samuel. He knew that their journey, though far from over, had brought them to a place of healing and understanding. He had learned the most profound lesson of all, that the greatest wealth one could have was the ability to love, to forgive, and to be present for those who matter most. As the evening drew to a close, and the gallery buzzed with admirers of Nathaniel's work, Samuel took a moment to reflect on everything that had led him here. He thought of the man he had once been, the arrogant businessman consumed by success and status, and the man he had become, a father who truly understood what it meant to love, to support, and to be there for his son. It was in this quiet moment of reflection that Samuel finally understood something that had eluded him for so long. His wealth had never been about the numbers in his bank account. It had always been about the love
the lessons, and the connections he had made along the way. And now, standing beside Nathaniel, he realized that the greatest gift he could ever give his son was not money or possessions, but the freedom to see the world through eyes filled with hope, love, and endless possibility. As the last guests left the gallery, Samuel and Nathaniel walked out into the cool night air together. The city lights sparkled around them, but it was the quiet between them that spoke the loudest. They had found their way, together. And Maria, though she was no longer physically present, had left a lasting imprint on their hearts. She had shown them that miracles don't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes the greatest miracles are the small, quiet acts of love that change a life forever. In the end, the Blackwood family had learned that true healing comes not from what can be seen, but from what is felt deep within. And with that, they moved forward, united in the knowledge that no matter where life took them, they had everything they needed: love, faith, and the ability to see with their hearts.